Thank you. Okay, moving on now to item 3.2, report out from closed session. We have no reportable items other than to report that with respect to item 2.2, Trustee Leslie Beggs recused herself with respect to that closed session item. Moving on now to item 3.3, approval of minutes of the November 8, 2017 regular Board of Trustee meeting. I'll give the trustees a few moments to review those minutes and then entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Trustee Abe Rojas.
Second.
Second by, I think Lynn beat you there, Dawn, I think. So we'll have a second by Lynn Martin. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We'll move on now to item 3.4, public comment. I have been delivered by Graciela Molina 3 cards of individuals requesting to comment during public comment period. The first being Tom Nomoff, and I won't read the whole thing because that would take up probably more time than what you're going to talk. So per item, 5 minutes, but if you need a little extra, please give us an opportunity to give you a little additional time if you need some.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Tom Nomoff. I teach physics, chemistry, and physical science at Modesto Junior College. I've served as a full-time faculty member of this community since arriving here in 2000. There are many issues that I could address this evening, but given the fact that there's a 5-minute time limit on my comments, and also the fact that I tend to be sort of long-winded by nature, I'm going to focus on just one of these issues this evening, namely how the recent impasse reached in the negotiations between the Yosemite Community College District and the Yosemite Faculty Association can potentially hurt small programs and the students served by them. I'm going to use my situation as one of many examples here because I think it reflects the reality of many faculty who teach in small programs. There are currently 2 full-time physics teachers at Modesto Junior College, and this has been the case for my 17.5 years here. Those of us who teach in small departments are often required to wear a lot of hats in order to offer complete programs in our disciplines. In physics, for example, 3 different levels are offered at Modesto Junior College. We've got the calculus-based physics for the engineering, the computer science, and the physics majors. We've got the algebra and the trig-based physics for the life science majors, and this would include our students who wish to become physicians, pharmacists, physical therapists, for example. We also have a level of physics for our non-majors. Many of these people are pursuing technical degrees in health-related fields like ultrasound. We also have students that are simply trying to satisfy the physical science breadth requirement. Between physics, physical science, and chemistry, I currently teach 11 different courses at our college. This requires my colleague, the one other physics teacher, and myself to typically teach a lot of overload each year. Not because we necessarily want to, but because we need to in order to offer complete programs in our disciplines. This semester, for example, my course load is at 192%. Soon after I finish giving my comments here, I'm going to race over to the Science Community Center to give a 3-hour final in a adjunct and overload class I teach on Wednesday evenings. I'm going to miss my son's basketball game to be there. I'm going to miss half of his games this season to teach that class. I've missed half of his games for that Wednesday night class for the first 3 years of his high school. We've looked for qualified adjunct faculty to teach physics courses in the past, but in a county where the majority of physics courses taught at the secondary level are taught by people without physics degrees, it's not surprising that finding qualified adjunct faculty to teach courses in physics here is a lot to ask. So basically what I'm saying is that if my colleague and I don't teach these courses as overload, often enrolling students beyond our class caps in the process, it is very likely that these courses will not get taught, meaning our students will suffer, our program will suffer, and our institution will suffer. I think I can safely speak for the great majority of my colleagues in programs both small and large when I say that we as faculty regularly make sacrifices above and beyond our contractual obligations in order to serve our students, our programs, and our institution. We would like the Yosemite Community College District to both recognize and to value our service to the community by honoring its compensation agreement with the faculty of this institution, the faculty who are the direct link to the students we serve. In my 17+ years at Modesto Junior College, I've never been motivated to simply teach to the contract, because I know that in doing so, I will not be providing the best service to our students. But this is a course of action that I am sadly prepared to take, and a course of action that I will encourage my colleagues to pursue as well until the Yosemite Community College District chooses to honor the contract that it has negotiated with us. It's truly upsetting for me to be up here saying this tonight. I don't want to be in this position. I didn't get into education or choose to come to this college because I relish this sort of conflict in my life. So I am hoping that in moving forward from this point, the Yosemite Community College Board of Trustees will consciously, decisively, and unanimously choose to do the right thing for its faculty and the students they serve. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, next we have Terry Curtis.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Terry Curtis. I teach biology at Modesto Junior College, and I fully support what my colleague Tom Nomet just shared. I will keep my comments brief. I have deep respect for the dedication and professionalism of my fellow faculty. And I'm concerned, as a longtime faculty member, I'm concerned with a general feeling in the faculty of feeling undervalued. It may be naive to think and believe that we should get the full support of the board and the district in supporting and recognizing the hard work of faculty. I ask the board to encourage district negotiators to negotiate within the mutually agreed to parameters of the contract. I feel, even though it may be obvious, that it needs to be emphasized that faculty are the direct daily link to students in our classroom and outside the classroom. And with that, we are the ones producing the FTEs, and we deserve to be compensated fairly. I thank you.
Next we have Noah Hughes.
Hi there. My goal tonight is to share my perspective on the YFA negotiations right now by way, and also maybe toot my own horn a little bit, and that might provide a little bit of that perspective and context for why I think some of us showed up tonight. So I have to tell a little story, so please indulge me. It was 2 Fridays ago. I met my oceanography class in the parking lot at 6:50 a.m. to jump on a bus that they had paid for a driver they had paid for and gas that they had paid for as a special course fee. And I was volunteering my time to go on this field trip. And by 9:30, we were hiking along the Asilomar Coast intertidal zone. We spent the afternoon at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, learning about how marine species are adapted to various habitats in the ocean. But we had to cut it a little bit early and head home because it was science night at the museum that Friday night. It was first Friday. And are you guys aware of science night? Okay, good. This is a first Friday of the month. Every event we coordinate with the Great Valley Museum. I don't need to tell you about it because I saw a lot of nodding. The Great Valley Museum has special nighttime hours, special planetarium shows, and all the science clubs and all the faculty advisors of those clubs get an opportunity to share what they do and what they're passionate about with the public. My club rolls out 5 or 6 telescopes onto the roof of the Science Community Center, and we spend about 3 hours up there with big long lines, and anywhere from 100 on a quiet night to 400 or 500 on a busy night. Folks from the general public just come out and they get to learn about astronomy and look through a telescope at 4 or 5 different objects. The big telescope with the dome is open, and everybody's pretty excited. And the lobby is filled with other science clubs sharing what they're passionate about. In other words, it's families and kids having a positive on-campus experience while learning science. It's MJC students getting to share what they know, what they've learned, and practice what they've learned, what they're passionate about. It's a fundraiser for the Great Valley Museum. It's Measure E funds all being put to great use by the folks who paid for it, the public. And from faculty, it's all volunteer, and for the students too. So was the field trip that day. So anyways, there I am a couple Fridays ago. Now I'm on the roof of the science building and I'm cold. It's 10:30 p.m. It's been 16 hours since I met my oceanography class in the parking lot that morning. I'm helping to roll the last of the telescopes in, and I start thinking about the fact that I just missed my Friday office day today because I'm teaching an extra section right now, and that extra lab section, which is a real bargain for the college as I understand it. And anyways, there's all this grading and entering and emails and planning that has to happen, but it didn't get done that day, and now it's getting close to 11. So I swing by my office to grab my stuff and a quick sweep of my emails. There's an update on YFA negotiations. It's not going well. There's some numbers I read. There's stuff about faculty productivity versus productivity in other sectors. There's discussions of faculty median pay. There's discussions of cohorts and changing cohorts in midstream. And it's really, I get frustrated. Now it's getting really late, and I'm going home after just a great day of working really hard. And, you know, we all work hard, right? So no big deal. I don't expect a medal or anything. But now I'm frustrated because it's just not fair. And that's what I came to say tonight. I just want the feeling like it's fair. All that stuff, the club advisors and the science night and the overload sections and all that stuff, I don't want to feel like it's being taken for granted. And I kind of am right now. And so I just came to ask that we negotiate fairly. And that's all. I know there's a lot of perspectives about this that you all have to hear, and thanks for listening to mine. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Okay, I have not received any other slips. Was there anyone that would still like to come up for public comment period that has not filled one of these out? Okay, we'll close the public comment period. Moving on now to 4.1 Board Finance Committee report. The Finance Committee met on November 20th. Committee members are myself, Abe Rojas, and Don Viss. We discussed, the bulk of our time was the audit report that is on the agenda and the voluminous amount of material that took up your agenda for this month. That was the bulk of our time. And so my thanks to staff and the auditors for their time in putting that together. And then we talked about just a general update on the district-wide budget, district as a whole, colleges respectfully. And we were going to have a report on where we're at on growth for the year, but we didn't have any current data, so we postponed that. We will not have a December meeting, and we're going to push that off until the January meeting. So we'll have another item to report when it comes to January. So that's all I have. Moving on now to item 4.2, Board Policy Committee Report.
Well, thank you, Chair Garrett. The Board Policy Committee met this Monday, and we went over all of the policies that are on the agenda tonight for first reading. These are in the 4000 series. They deal with the academic affairs, and of some concern was the procedures, which the board doesn't do, but we're concerned about it. And since this is academic, each college will sort of be writing their own procedure with guidelines from the chancellor. Those guidelines are listed as procedures, but they're not really procedures. One of the concerns we had was we'd like students to have easy access, being able to find everything necessary that goes with a policy and procedure. So we were talking about having a link, but then we're told that the stuff in the catalog changes every year, be in a different spot. So I'm not sure exactly how to resolve that, but that was a concern that was brought up. We had very few changes. Connie will go over those tonight in our report. And we also had some discussion with Meredith Brown regarding due process, which did not satisfy the committee in regards to what we were looking for. So we've given her some direction and hope that, so the due process thing is still hanging out there, and we hope that she'll come back with some more specific information that we requested. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Moving on now to item 5, reports and information items, 5.1, accreditation update. Who would like to go first? Looks like Dr. James Todd. Brian's too smart for that, I think. So.
Good evening. How are you? Good to see you again. As you know, we received our initial report from the visiting team, and Jill and I had a chance to talk with Dr. Lori Adrian, who was the visiting team chair, and give her some errors of fact. We had a good conversation about what we received, and I think part of the conversation was really positive in a sense that we had 10 commendations from the team, and a lot of the recommendations that we had received as well were things that we were already working on and expected to be working on, including our QFE. So in January, we have an appointment. I'm going to be going to speak before the commission on the 11th at 1:35 in support of the college and the work that we're doing, and then we'll wait to hear back from the commission after that. So that's where we are with accreditation. We're continuing to work on some of our process and our policies in terms of what we initially got from the group, but part of this is about waiting to hear the final word from the commission. So
for those folks out in the public that don't know academic acronyms, QFP is?
It's our quality focused essay
Okay.
in terms of looking at a couple of areas of the college. We're supposed to write about 2 things that we're working on as an institution to improve in terms of student success.
Perfect. Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Dr. Brian Sanders.
Very similar. We received an opportunity to review the report. Dr. Fairchild's had a chance to review the report that was sent forward to the commission and made a few minor modifications to that and corrections of fact, that kind of thing. Sent that back, had some good dialogue there. We too are slated for January 11th for an appointment with the commission, and Dr. Fairchild and Chancellor Young are going to be there to speak on behalf of our institution briefly in case the commission has any questions, to present some of the progress that we've made on certain matters since our site visit. As you know, we had a series of commendations and a few recommendations, and we've looked at those recommendations very carefully. We've also been working to follow through on our quality focus essay. As a precursor to that, we identified early in the process that working on student learning outcomes was an important piece. piece and trying to integrate those things in. So Dr. Fairchild's arranged for us to have a visit from a partnership resources team, chaired at the time by a certain president from another college named Henry Young. And he came in and gave us a number of good suggestions, his team, and helped us through a two-phase process of a first visit to get ideas on how we can do better on SLOs, and then a second visit to follow through on a plan. This last week, we had a third visit, the final follow-up visit with that group, and they were able to get an update on our progress on those matters, on what we've been doing with the QFE since that time. And they were very pleased with it. They gave us some suggestions on a couple of additional things, and that process is now concluded. So again, we're making progress to follow through on the recommendations and on our QFE.
Thank you, Brian.
Questions? Nope, thank you.
Okay, moving on now to item 5.2, enrollment update.
We're actually going to report from here, if that's okay.
That's perfectly acceptable.
All right, and there you see, those are the targets for Columbia College Modesto Junior College for this year, combined 16,542. I say combined because that's the approach that we take, is that we do look at it as a shared responsibility to hit that target. And there's a lot of collaboration in that regard, particularly surrounding the offerings in Oakdale. So we are on track to meet that target.
So this is a snapshot in time, and this was actually taken as of December 7th. So these, if you try to replicate these numbers today, you're not going to be able to do so because we're in the midst of our spring registration period. And so those numbers continue to change, not just because of registration. This is actually predictive. These are our projections of what our enrollment would look like, but again, it's based upon what the schedule looked like on December 7th. The schedule for spring looks different today than it did 5 days ago, 6 days ago. So this is in process, but it is certainly informing what we are currently engaged in at both colleges in terms of making revisions to spring and continuing to refine what our planned offerings are for early summer and our flexible summer. And the flexible summer are those courses that are scheduled in a manner that they can either be used in this year or they can be counted toward next year. And so our fall numbers, again, include some projections because it has estimates in those courses that are positive attendance because we don't know those final numbers until after Saturday when our semester officially closes.
So looking at this chart, you can see we've laid out what it's going to take for us to reach the target. And you can see the column in red where we talk about invoking the tool that the State Chancellor's Office gives us on using those flexible summer enrollments in either year. So as it sits right now with the schedule that we have in the state that it is right now and what we know about the fall, you can see that we're looking at invoking that tool to roll 225 FTES. However, with the things that we still have in process that we'll talk about in just a second, our goal is to minimize that number with the ideal being that we will eliminate it and maybe even get some in the plus column.
So what we're going to talk about now is some of the impacts as well as the enrollment management. And we're not going to get in the weeds nearly like we did when we had 2.5 hours recently in a study session around enrollment management. But there are things that continue to change and new impacts that come into what we are doing in terms of how we are building a schedule that serves students well. For spring of 2018, MJC we invested in and have launched and are now able to reap some benefit from a new tool called Ad Astra. And it's a scheduling analytics tool. And we have just this week really received the first reporting on our schedule, and it's not just about what's happening at MJC, but they also give us some normed information based upon the work that they do across a variety of colleges. And it has really given us another lens through which to look at our schedule. One of the things that we have known intuitively and now have, based upon our enrollment patterns, but now have confirmed by the data from Ad Astra is our schedule is not big enough at MJC. And so even though we are expending all of our budget, the schedule is not large enough. And in particular, what Ad Astra recommends is an 85%, what they, and it's a different term, so I'm going to look at it, enrollment ratio. And that's what they're looking at in terms of, we might call it a fill rate across the schedule. MJC hovers between 93 and 97%, meaning that we are very, very full. There's not room in our schedule for students who would like to take another class. And so we have some work to do. We recognize that we have some build out that needs to happen in order for us to not be restricting access for students. So that's where even today our deans had a strategic planning session where they were actually working on these very particular directed information that came through Ad Astra around where we needed to expand our schedule.
And we're still building out the spring to add things like the courses that we're offering at the prisons. We've been asked to expand to a couple of other prison camps in hospitality and the fire technology. And so those are not reflected yet or even projected as part of our enrollments. Of course, we always look at late starts as, and we do that strategically based on what the demand may be. And as students continue to enroll for the spring, we'll look at those wait lists. And open enrollment starts on the 18th. And so that's when we usually see, a big uptick in, because finals are out of the way and people that are dragging their feet on enrolling enroll. And we've seen a surprising increase in dual enrollment, largely due to the CCAP, in the CTE areas, but also in advertising that opportunity, the interest in general in students getting college credit while they're still in high school. We were in a meeting yesterday with the county, all of the superintendents in Tuolumne County and the county superintendent of schools, and talking about how we expected it to grow, but to grow 82% in just one semester was pretty amazing. And we certainly expect as we start promoting or continue to promote the College Promise Scholarship, that we will see some early enrollments relative to that for students that, from the high schools that will enroll in dual enrollment. And of course, the summer, we've just put the figures that you saw on the chart were just for if we sort of build a summer in the same manner that we did this past time. We're being a lot more strategic, though, about what we put in the summer and trying to promote the opportunity of Think 30. So even if you take 12 units in the fall and spring, that you can still make up those additional 6 units by taking classes in the summer. So that's a campaign that we've just kicked off as well.
Great. So we also have been expanding ESL and looking at adult education non-credit course options. And so at MJC, one of the impacts that we see in our current FTES is this move toward ESL in the non-credit format. And so It's a significant number of courses. We have 23 sections of non-credit ESL this fall, and they are, for the most part, absolutely full to the brim. And so that's a big shift in terms of what our enrollment looks like. And both colleges are also developing the teacher prep pipeline programs and are working with our local K-12 partners in doing so.
Okay, the enhanced student support
So both colleges also have made many changes to how we are approaching student support, and you have heard much about that. We are seeing that our students are responding in very positive ways. MJC has a much higher head count this fall than we are accustomed to, and so that is definitely having an impact on our enrollment management, and really, as we look at the number of bodies we're serving and where that our FTES is virtually flat from last year, it really adds to that perspective that our schedule just isn't large enough to serve students in a way that would get them through in 2 years if that was the path that they were on.
And we're also focused on enhancing retention, so it's always easier to keep the enrollment that you have rather than constantly go out and find new enrollment. So we're certainly working on those efforts as well. And then, of course, we have strong workforce program, more and better CTE. There are a lot of efforts across the district in that regard, including some collaborations, not just within our district, but also with other districts as well. And coupled with that is statewide effort to market across the state and regionally the CTE opportunities that are available in the local areas.
So one of the impacts that is really at this point unknown is around guided pathways. One of the things that the AACC cohort, which was the national cohort that has launched guided pathways, has found is that at about the third year point, you see a reduction in your whatever their equivalent of FTES is in other states, because as students have more directed and focused intentional education planning and pathways that they do complete quicker. And so they may not be picking up those 20, 30 additional units like they might have in our current path. And so that's a bit of an unknown that's out there for us.
And then there's multiple measures, a new way of assessing for placement in English and math, and we expect to see the enrollments in the college level math and English classes increase because students will be placed not just based on how they score on the placement exams, but actually high school transcripts and GPAs and other ways of placing the, if you're having a bad day and you take that placement test, then you're going to end up in a level or two below where your skills really are, and that was the intent of the multiple measures and AB 905, I believe.
And so if you've had a chance to watch any TV since Monday and you're a Comcast subscriber, you might have seen the new MJC commercial. And we are running an ad. It really features our CTE programs and that we are ready and prepared to help you when you walk in the door. And it was a very quick turnaround using some funds that were available through Strong Workforce. And I am excited to see if that has an impact, because one of the challenges that we currently face is traditional marketing methods do not result in more students. And so this is the first time that we've gone into the TV market in the last 6 years, and we're interested to see if that does reach potential students.
Okay. So in summary, we're on track to reach the YCCD target of 16,542 FTES. We're doing it through focused and strategic schedule development and with an eye to increasing student success.
Questions?
That's it?
That's
Okay.
it.
Any questions?
Yeah, where does online classes fit into this? Is it part of the strategy here?
It's all part of the strategy, yes.
I have a question about when you're saying that the schedule's not large enough at MJC, that there are not enough class offerings that a student can take to fill their schedule. What does that mean in terms of teaching those classes? Does that mean more overtime for full-time? Does it mean hiring more adjuncts or giving adjuncts more hours? What does it involve?
Yes, it means all of that.
Okay.
So, and one of the things that we do is there's no demand of overload, right? So, and we really appreciate those faculty that do teach over and above. And I was surprised to hear how high it was this evening. But it does open the door for additional adjuncts, and we have been working with Human Resources to get some of those recruitments up. And there are absolutely disciplines where it is much more difficult to find highly qualified individuals than others. And each college has their own challenge areas, and it really is highly influenced by the type of employment in the area.
Thanks.
They don't have trouble finding physicists at Las Positas, right? Because they're next door to Lawrence Livermore Labs, so.
Well, thank you both very much. Any further comments, questions from the two presidents? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Moving on now to item 5.3, constituency reports, and we'll start off with the Student Senate activity report.
Good evening, trustees. I hope you all are as excited as I am for the holidays and the extra time we're going to spend with our family and loved ones. I'm here to update you for this month. ASMGC has been staying busy with events. I'm happy to inform you that we've been working hard to help students the best way that we can. This past month, we held an event called Find Your Pathway. A student success specialist joined forces and assisted students with questions regarding their educational pathways, and coupled with the Career Center working with students on tags and college applications. It means so much for our team that Free Lunch on Wednesdays continues to do well. We served over 5,000 students at lunch this past semester, so that was pretty exciting to see within the data. Last week, we had our last event for the semester, and it was very successful. Cram Night is an event where students are given the opportunity to cram one more night of studying before the week of finals. We had several professors participate and join the students for extra help on questions they may have. ASMGC provided food, water, and coffee for our students. Nearly 300 students attended, so finally, ASMGC has worked with Columbia College to align our nomination and election process. It is very important that as many students as possible are made aware of our nominations. ASMGC nomination packets will be available on the first day of school. For the second year in a row, we are very proud to give students up to 2 months to decide to possibly run. Our team is excited to spend one more semester together before the school ends. I wish you all happy holidays, full of joy and cheer. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Any questions?
No? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Happy holidays to you as well.
Yes.
Do we have anyone here from Columbia? You have the Columbia report?
Yes, hi. Good evening, board and guest. I apologize for my tardiness, and without further ado, I will go right into the report. Iron Bass extends his apologies for not being able to attend. I will be giving the report in his steadfast. Much like our MJC counterparts, we also had a night of, we call it educational preparedness, but the short name is Cram Night. And and in this night, we also had many faculty and staff come and provide their time in the library, which was wonderful to have that location. Many students took advantage of it. We, as the student ambassadors, took it amongst ourselves to make it more fun by having a raffle in there, and the grand prize was a Chromebook, and unfortunately I did not walk away with it, but it was very much entertaining because our student ambassadors dressed up as elves, and unfortunately I didn't bring pictures, but I was in there too, so you know it was going to be good. Afterwards, earlier this same week, we had a retirement party for our counselor, Jeff Fitzwater. And the reason why I bring this up is because many of our student ambassadors, like myself, are always in that center building. And whenever there's a cleanup, whenever there's a setup, we're constantly always said, hey, go help them out over there. And, well, you know, that's part of the job. And we all love doing that. We all love giving our help whenever we can. And it shows because our school is doing the exact same thing. For this entire week, as its finals, faculty in the Manzanita building, which is our center hub, is having soup for all of the staff and faculty. They're different every week, every day for teachers. The week before finals, 2 weeks before finals, scholarships were due, and many of the student workers in the TRIO and transfer program had a thing called the panic room, much like our cram night, where students could come in until 9 o'clock, and student and faculty would be there ready to help them to go out like that. We do a lot. Our student government also had a very, very lively Santa Secret workshop for the Child Development Center at our school. And so all the little children who are being taken care of at the preschool came over, and we had elves and Santa Claus there, and many pictures and food. And there's always food at Columbia, which is a wonderful thing. And lastly, the TRIO program once again went on a field trip, which I happened to take part of, where we went to go see the campuses of UC Merced and Stanislaus State. Among there, we have many friends who used to work with faculty that took us on the trip. So we were able to get a lot of inside information and more extensive tours because of the fun and connections that were already there. I want to extend my thank you to the Chancellor for meeting with me prior to this meeting and giving me more comfort in this building. And I look forward to the many meetings to come now. And thank you also to Lynn and Angela Fairchild for meeting with me after the last board meeting and really helped me understand what it is we do here. So thank you again. If there's any questions, I'll take them now.
Any questions? All right, well, thank you very much for that detailed report. Moving on now to the California School Employees Association CSEA report, Debbie Partridge.
So I don't like sitting in the front row, so I had to sit in the middle of the back. So CSEA has an election tomorrow for our officers for 2018. So we'll see who will be representing us. I did attend the holiday event last night, and I saw many of you there. I was very impressed by how many retirees were there. To me, that shows that people who work here get MJC in their heart, and they don't want to let it go. And it was really neat to see faculty I've helped before, and a lot of retired classified staff and administrators, and everybody with a smile on their face. And I thank the foundation and Jill for putting that event on. I think it was awesome. All of us, I'm including faculty and administrators, are working in an accelerated mode, and we're thankful for the upcoming break. I would like to put a call out. We do have our classified staff in campus safety who will work over the break. I appreciate what they give up of their families to protect the college and the district. And I wish you happy holidays and as much happiness in whatever tradition you celebrate. That's all I have.
Any questions for Debbie? Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Moving on now to the faculty representative to the board, Alan McKissick.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. Various faculty initiatives are in development. I'll just briefly mention one in which I'm involved. The Voter Education and Registration Committee of the Civic Engagement Project is discussing a program beginning next semester and continuing through the 2018 election of doing what that committee does, voter education and furthering higher education's role in producing good citizens. In the past, that committee has partnered with ASMJC and the League of Women Voters for this kind of project. Perhaps we can again. When those groups get together and work on a project, it gets to be pretty notable. At this time in our country's political culture, public education needs to revitalize its role in producing informed, critically thinking voters. At some point next semester, there will probably be a report to present to a request to present to the board on this project, which leads me to, again, mention the faculty interest in making presentations to the board relating to our programs and projects. I hope board members will let me know of any particular topic of interest to the board about online education, lab courses, and so on. And as always, I encourage you please to contact me whenever you'd like to. What I don't know, I can endeavor to find out. And while I can't always speak for someone, I can speak to someone or to a group. And I also want to say it was encouraging to hear the board's continuing interest in due process issues relating to investigations of complaints and so on. There's a lot of unfinished business there from the faculty point of view. I want to thank you for this opportunity again. And are there any questions? Thanks.
Like there aren't, but I want to thank you for reaching out to me and the productive conversation that you and I had over the phone. I think we covered a lot of ground, and it was nice to have you reach out and have those discussions. And with respect to the presentations that you mentioned, I think just work directly with Chancellor Yang, and if you have something that's of vital interest or important to the faculty and you want to do a presentation, I think working with the Chancellor, we're all supportive of that. So if you want to do that, I think we just continue that and work through the Chancellor to accomplish that.
After the last meeting, I spoke briefly with Trustee DeMartini and with Chancellor Yang, and they were very encouraging along these same lines, and I'm very pleased to hear it. Recently, I heard a very impressive presentation about the irrigation technology program at MJC, and I said, you know, this would be perfect for a presentation of the board, and then I was told it was already done last year, so I guess you heard that one.
Well, thank you, Alan. Moving on now to the academic Senate activity reports, and I'll leave it up to you fine colleagues who wants to go first there. Looks like Aaron will go first.
I got heads, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So 3 things. Cram night. Faculty enjoy it. From my personal view, in addition to helping students study, it's a great night to sit down and talk to students about their long-range plans, encourage them to get into their classes for the next semester, make sure they're registered, and they know what's next. So it's a nice moment outside of class to encourage students in their long-term plans. 2, through Angie's work with our Central Valley cohort, we have accepted an invitation to be part of it's called Lead from the Middle Academy, and there's a special cohort now that's of the Central Valley colleges. The idea is that there will be 3 weekend retreats over a period of a year, and each college has a group of 5 faculty, classified staff, and administrators to work on guided pathways. So we're excited to be sending our team as part of the academy to be part of this community of practice as our college continues to explore how to best get guided pathways at Columbia College. And my third thing is we're pretty excited about our Flex Day activity. I no longer remember what FLEX stands for. I think it's an acronym, I don't. But so the Friday before classes start, we have some professional development and work to do at the college. And so this Friday in the morning, the faculty are getting together to work on our 2-year course plans. So to revise them, look at them in light of our degrees and certificates. So making sure that when we offer courses, works for students to finish their degrees and certificates. And also, I think even more critically, is within a semester, really understanding what classes are we offering, what are the patterns that students are taking them, and are we making sure that we're scheduling them at times so that students can take all the classes they need to in that semester. One of the challenges we have at Columbia College is we often offer one section of a course, and so it's critical that that one course of physics isn't conflicting with our one section of calculus. And so we try to be mindful of that, but we're recognizing we could do a better job with that. And so we're hoping to do a lot of work towards that on that Friday. And those are my 3 things. Any questions?
Any questions for Aaron? And for those out there and for the minutes, I should have said you're representing the Academic Senate of Columbia College, so I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the Academic Senate President for Modesto Junior College, Curtis Martin.
Good evening, board members. It was good to see many of you at yesterday's foundation. I wouldn't call it a dinner, but what do I call it? Holiday party. Perfect. I'll start where usually people end. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I like playing around with analogies, if only because they help us visualize difficult concepts, ideas, or processes. I woke up this morning thinking about my presentation today. I wanted it to be a, quote, happy report that was not vacuous. I wondered, how do I report to the board the complexities of our institution without it coming across as a critique? How do I faithfully report to the board the concerns of my constituency without it sounding like we are a dysfunctional institution? More importantly, how do I highlight our accomplishments without sounding like everything is hunky-dory or worry-free? I thought of our institution as a car, going back to the analogy. Although in all honesty, in my head, it was an old jalopy that despite its creaks, squeaks, and rumbling, kept moving forward towards its destination. At times, we needed to stop to gas up, change a tire, fix a leaking hose, and perhaps settle an argument about how among its occupants about the best road to take toward our destination. But make no mistake, everyone in the car agreed on the destination, which in our case is to educate our students in a successful and timely manner. Few would argue that our car needed to be kept in working order if we were to succeed in arriving. But few would argue against the idea that how we got there was also important. The point is, we need to find a balance between how the institution works and how it moves ahead towards lofty goal of student success. And that is where the tension resides. Change is disruptive, and change is currently our name. There's enormous pressure from the legislature, the state chancellor's office, think tanks, and taxpayers to reform educational institutions in order to make them more effective and efficient. What is being proposed is innovative, different, scary, and still mostly uncharted. To an extent, we are flying blindly and must constantly check and recheck to ensure that we are moving in the desired direction. We don't always succeed, but most of the time we do. Part of keeping the institution in working order includes the mundane, like accreditation, program review, and assessment. Our congratulations to administrators, staff, and faculty that met the challenge and helped us pass accreditation with flying colors. Somebody may argue with me, but I thought it was with flying colors, okay? My personal opinion. And congratulations to those that worked to design and implement new versions of program review and assessment, neither of which were mentioned as a deficiency in the preliminary report by ACCJC. Our congratulations to English and Math for revamping their curriculum in order to increase success rates and time to completion for students in their traditional bottlenecks. Congratulations to the science faculty for offering the science colloquium, one of which I attended recently, and I couldn't believe that the room was just packed to the gills. There was also an added bonus. It was my son doing the presentation, who is just a recent graduate as a bioengineer and came to talk to our students about nanotechnology, okay? Congratulations to our Ag, Speech, and PE faculty that are so successful in delivering wins, competition after competition. Congratulations to Student Services for their work in reconfiguring how services are delivered to students and how best to create a bridge between the traditional divide between instruction and counseling. Congratulations to our civic engagement project that so thoughtfully created spaces to engage difficult and timely issues, global warming, racism, immigration, etc., etc., etc. Of course, there are many more that quietly work to guarantee the success of our institution. Our thanks to all of you. Still, we have work to do. The prolonged and unsuccessful negotiations serve as a distraction to important work and affect faculty morale, an important barometer for an educational institution. The constant introduction of new initiatives that are poorly planned and have tight timelines also do little to inspire trust, dialogue, and engagement. Which brings me to my final point. Dialogue, and I mean dialogue, is the most important tool at our disposal to build trust and engage us in the work of training future generations. We can't think as corporations. We can't think as businesses. We are not here to make money or a profit. We are here to educate our students, and that means that we need to think like educators committed to the success of our students. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Curtis?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to the Leadership Team Advisory Council, LTAC, Klaus Teenbergen.
Good evening. The LTAC board members have met several times in the last weeks, and we're looking into the professional education program and how it's funded, and put this out for a vote to the membership early next year. There may be a possibility of a deduction of the dues from the payroll, and we're exploring that possibility. We're planning 2 professional opportunities, one on each campus throughout 2018, as well as 2 socials throughout the next academic year. We have now scheduled a regular meeting with Chancellor Young, between the LTAC president, myself, and the Chancellor on a regular basis. As well, we have a work group to review the evaluation process of the LTAC members. Any questions?
Any questions for Klaus? No? All right, thank you, Klaus. Okay, we'll now move on to the Yosemite Faculty Association, YFA, and their president, Jim Ullman.
Good evening. I have 3 items to report tonight. First, the YFA and MJC Academic Senate hosted our annual holiday open house on Monday, December 11th in the faculty lounge. Approximately 50 or more faculty attended this event, as well as Chancellor Young, trustees Rojas, DiMartini, Garrett, and Beggs. Everyone seemed to enjoy themselves, the social interaction, and the wonderful food. A similar event will happen at Columbia College in April. Second, since Alan McKissick has become new faculty liaison to the board, his position on the YFA exec board resulted in a vacancy. Alan's position has now been filled by Professor of Environmental Horticulture, Dale Pollard. We are pleased that Dale has stepped forward into this faculty leadership position. Third, it is now more than 2 years since the YFA and YCCD began negotiations on this current round of bargaining. We started on November 6, 2015. Our contract expired on June 30th, 2016. The faculty have become frustrated with several events surrounding our negotiations. These past 24 months of YFA, YCCD negotiations have included: number 1, conditional bargaining. The district negotiating team told us in spring 2016 that the board would not allow us to negotiate salary and benefits until we had finished negotiating workload, which is Article 4 and Appendix B. Aside from the fact that this changed the original agreed-upon order of negotiation topics as approved and ratified in the 2015 tentative agreement between the YCCD and YFA, conditional bargaining is a violation of the Educational Employment Relations Act, or the EERA. Number 2, a unilateral change in the conditions of the contract. The district negotiating team has told us repeatedly since spring of 2017 that the board will not negotiate total compensation based upon the current cohort, which is established in Article 14.1 of the contract. I quote, "The board has said that any discussion about compensation using the current cohort is a non-starter," end quote, as stated by the district's negotiating team. But while the district is welcome to negotiate a new cohort with us, the district cannot unilaterally change the conditions of the current contract. Total compensation is determined by our current cohort, and disregarding that is a violation of the EERA. This would be no different than if the YFA unilaterally decided not to work 42.5 hours per week as stated in the contract, but rather 40 hours per week. Or counselors logging in 1,000 hours instead of 1,026. Neither side gets to do that by fiat. Number 3, direct bargaining. The YFA attempted to negotiate summer pay for faculty who are asked, encouraged, or made to feel obligated to work during the summer to show compliance with the Federal Labor Standards Act. Examples of such work are academic senate presidents or other senate members who are asked to work during the summer for meeting accreditation objectives, nursing faculty who write grants or are required to do other summer work in preparation with local hospitals, counseling faculty who are told that their summer work is voluntary, etc. The week following the YFA's initial discussions on payments for summer work, one of the district's negotiating team members engaged in direct bargaining with one of the academic senates regarding summer compensation. Regardless of who initiated the discussion, this same administrator should have known better and should have stated that it was inappropriate for the district to be negotiating outside the established bargaining practices. Number 4, trustee interference with union members. An elected official of the Board of Trustees made disparaging remarks about YFA leadership, and in particular made the claim that the current YFA leadership and negotiating team is the reason why the faculty have not received the same 2% as other employees. This violated Government Code 3543.5A, which states that it is unlawful for a public school employer to otherwise interfere with employee organizations. And number 5, no authority to bargain. In July of 2015, the YFA and YCCD reached a tentative agreement on a 3-year contract using a compensation proposal initiated by the district's negotiating team. The following board meeting, the YFA learned that the board did not approve of the agreement, and we were sent back to the negotiating table. Of course, that could only happen if the board was neither unaware nor provided prior authorization to the district team to make such an offer. 2 years later, we have experienced the exact same scenario. Our last negotiating session in this round was held on Friday, December 1st. All 6 YFA negotiating team members were in attendance. While the district had 2 members during the entire meeting due to other scheduling conflicts, in the final 1.5 hours of negotiating, and after the district's lead negotiator left for a more important appointment and replaced with a different negotiating district team member, an offer was made to the YFA as part of the compensation package. Since the offer had never been discussed earlier, I asked if the district's negotiating team had been authorized to make this offer. The response I received was shocking. Quote, "No, but we can sell it to the board," end quote, was the response. Additionally, I inquired about other compensation possibilities that were discussed at the YFA regarding 2018. Again, I asked, "Do you have authorization from the board to be making this offer?" The response, as before, was no. This last item, the lack of authority to negotiate, is the final straw with the Yosemite Faculty Association. As you have just heard, the YCCD has engaged in at least 5 unfair labor practices violating good faith negotiations with the YFA. So where are we now? First, we currently have no future negotiations scheduled. 0. None. Second, faculty know that our contractual hours do not adequately cover the time needed to perform all duties. Consequently, the faculty has provided free labor, donated hours, and volunteered work in a variety of ways that the Yosemite Faculty Association has recently begun to quantify. And the amount of unpaid labor is already staggering looking at these initial numbers. This free labor can be considered analogous to a YFA credit card that the district uses to fill in the labor gaps. Starting this spring semester, I think the district administration will find that many faculty within the Yosemite Community College District, when the YFA credit card is swiped, will decline the charge in favor of only teaching to the contract and not providing free labor which might have been performed in the past. So, to borrow a well-known phrase, when our district administration seeks faculty volunteers or other donated work, the question that comes to mind for our district administration is, what's in your wallet now? Thank you.
Moving on to item 5.4, activities and announcements, Columbia College. Angie? Okay.
Okay, you can see that I have several items in my written report. Information on a Student Voices panel that was held last month, an update on our online education initiative for recognizing some faculty who were recognized for by the consortium for best practices. We had a wonderful holiday luncheon last Friday, and the unique thing this year is that it was cooked by the administrative team, and the classified staff did, where's Debbie? Did an awesome job with the dessert tent. It was, I mean, you name it, we had a version of it there. It was just, I can feel the sugar rush even now. You know, and it was a nice, pleasant, social time, no program, just come, eat, visit. Chancellor Young came up the hill. Trustee Martin came and had lunch with us, and it was just a nice, relaxing time for community. This Friday is our Fire Academy graduation, and that's always one of my favorites because you know, it's so traditional, and I just love the piper. Bagpipes always get to me. I've given you a little preview of the in-service day on January 4th, but I have a couple of things that are not in my written report. I thought that I would explain a little bit about the soup in the lobby. And that is that Erin only had 3 things, so she couldn't make it to 4th. But it was, actually, it's our slow camp. You know, we started this last year, and it's where faculty can come and get help with their student learning outcomes assessment, whether it be entering, whether it be figuring it out. They can have free soup, but we have a camp set up, like a little mini snow lodge complete with skis, decorated with Christmas lights, and Joe Manlove, our new SLO guru, is there along with other faculty who rotate through there to help their peers with student learning outcomes. And the idea, the reason it's that location is because when they come to submit their grades, it's real handy because it's right there. And you get soup. And I have to tell you that the soups this week, the smell wafts through our admin area, and delightful. But the other thing I wanted to share with you is that a little bit lower down on the agenda, where it's the grants activity update, there's one item, and it has about the Columbia College pre-apprenticeship grant, and it shows submitted. I'd like to share with you that it now should say funded, because we were notified just a couple of days ago $496,000, and the pre-apprenticeship is to create the pipeline, and this one focuses on the fire technology program. That's my report.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angie. Any questions for Angie? All right, thank you. Moving on now to item 5.5, activities and announcements. Modesto Junior College, President Stern.
Congratulations, Chair Garrett. John, it smells like smoke up here. Do we need to be concerned? Okay. Thank you. So let's talk sports. Congratulations to the MJC women's golf team who won our first women's state championship. Huge for them. Those young ladies did a fabulous job. And what was really interesting is we didn't have the top scorer or the second highest or third highest, but our team as a whole, as a group, scored right up there all together. And so just a fabulous job. So congratulations to our head coach, Milan Matroni, and her assistant coach, Dana Ebster. They just did a fabulous job. We just had our basketball tournaments. It was our 80th men's basketball tournament, and our men came in third place this year. It's just a wonderful tradition and a well-supported event. Longtime MJC employee and former coach Leon LaFile, who's 99, was able to be at the tournament for the opening night ceremonies. It was just fabulous to see him. And it was the first women's MJC basketball tournament, and the Pirates were the victors. And so we took first place in our first tournament. So congratulations to Mike Girardi and what he is doing with MJC basketball. We have a list of some of our completion ceremonies that are being held in the next couple of days, and I just want to point out number 3, the Fire Academy. Trustees, this was not on your list, but Friday at 2 p.m. in the Performing and Media Arts Center, we will celebrate the completion of our Fire Academy. And our Institute Day is set for January 5th, and it sounds like a long way away, and I know it will be here in just a blink of an eye. And I just want to add on a more personal note, James mentioned that he will be speaking to the commission. That's the day before my son is getting married. And so I appreciate that he is going to go in my stead and make that presentation so I can be mother of the groom. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stearns. Any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on now to item 5.6, presentation and updates, Yosemite Community College District Chancellor. Chancellor Yang.
Thank you, Chair Garrett. Good evening. I'd like to begin my report with a recognition of Andy Martini as the past chair. And I'm sure the audience noticed that we have changed our seating, even if you were not here when we opened the meeting earlier on this afternoon. That's because we have undergone election for the board. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Anne for her service this past year as chair. We don't have a Rolex watch, but we do have. Oh, she already has one. But we do have a beautiful piece of crystal made in Modesto, engraved in Modesto, with these words: presented to Andy Martini in recognition of your dedication and commitment to the Yosemite Community College District Board of Trustees and community. So I want to take this opportunity to thank her on behalf of the entire district.
actually, the phone was going, so that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. Appreciate it.
Next, I want to add my comments to accreditation. So on January 11, the presidents and I will be going to San Jose to meet with the commissioners from YCCD. And as it turned out, it will be Columbia College that will be called first. And so we would go in and make our presentation to the commissioners. And then after that, it will be Modesto Junior College's turn. We certainly hope that the commissioners will look at the totality of the achievements that have been accomplished at both colleges. They've given us a roadmap how that we can improve our institutional quality. And that is the essence of our community college. To serve the community by providing quality educational program. But at the same time, there must be a commitment to maintaining the quality. So they have given us these recommendations. They have also given us commendations. And that is a recognition of the work that they saw and the achievements that they saw. So I'm pleased with all of that. At the same time, while the two colleges are accredited, the district is not. They have given us recommendations and one commendation for the district as well. All of us look forward to meeting the requirements of the recommendations. In fact, the goal of the presidents and I, when we appear before the commissioners, is to give them an update. What we have done since the visit, even though we haven't received the formal verdict from the commissioners. We want them to know we're not resting, we have already started to work. So in the months ahead, there is much work to be done at both colleges and at the district office. So we will be reaching out, in some cases, to the constituencies for input, for support, for collaboration, so we can all accomplish this task. Next, I want to remind the trustees that by the end of this month, which is just not very long from now, that will be the end of my 6th month here as a chancellor. And in the contract that was signed when I started, it calls for an evaluation at 6 months.
New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. That's a good way to put it. So I just want to remind the trustees that they'll have homework over the holiday season, basically to think about my accomplishments and my shortcomings and to give me advice on how I can do better in the next half. And at the same time, I want to recognize the role of the colleges in which the presidents, vice president, and the deans have all aligned their goals to my goals that the board has set for me. So I look forward to the process. In academia, people come and go. In some cases, it may be because they have reached their own goals. In other cases, it may be for some other reasons. But in any case, when people come and when they leave, we always feel a sense of loss. I want to take a few moments this evening to recognize the retirement of 2 members of the executive team. Teresa Scott, known to many of you because she has spent 33 years of her life in this district and the last 25 years as a chief business officer. She is retiring. And we have Jan Mathis. She has spent 10 years in this district as the executive secretary to the chancellor. Prior to that, you'll be pleased to know that she spent 10 years supporting the ministry of a very large church in Modesto as the executive assistant. And prior to that, she spent 20 years as the CEO of her own business. So to Teresa and Jan, we want you to know that we will miss you. We thank you for all your years of service and contributions. Know that your work is valued and appreciated. And please feel free to come back and visit us anytime, because we still look forward to those days when you were here. Those days will be memories that we will treasure. So I thank you both. Thank you.
And with respect to your evaluation, I've already been put on notice by the previous chair that as a collective group, we need to work on that. And I don't think you have anything to worry about. I don't think there'll be any coal in your stocking this year. So I think you're on good footing. So we'll move on now to item 5.7, the bond update. I think we have a brief presentation on that.
Good evening, trustees. In your packet, you received some information with the bond update. Unless you have any specific questions on those documents, I like to go straight into the presentation. We did insert a few video clips to try and liven up the presentation. So with that, I like to go straight into the presentation.
Please do. Thank you.
Tonight I'll be presenting on the Modesto Junior College projects because the Columbia projects are complete. The first project is, of course, as you have seen, is the parking lot project that is taking place just to the west of us. And if you've noticed, all the buildings have been tore down. They are still working on clearing up the site, but the buildings are pretty much down. Go ahead.
I came in the back way and I thought I was lost.
You know, a lot of people have been coming in that way thinking, oh, they can still come in, but, you know, yeah, it's starting to change the look of the west side of the campus. Here again, we still have the same layout. The next slide is the actual 1-minute clip of when the demolition started on building 1000.
Was there only one backhoe?
Finally hits the floor, and that was the end of that building.
I don't see any tears on the part of people that used to work in there. So, you didn't have a impromptu funeral when the building came down or anything?
That was my home for 32 years.
Right, yeah.
Moving on to the painting project, all 4 phases that were identified for East Campus are now complete. The last phases, phase 3 and 4 for the West Campus, those will be bid out early next year, closer to the springtime. And I do have some pictures here showing the new color schemes of how the buildings look. So this is the ag complex, so it's the instructional building, the shops, and the storage area. The next slide is just the physical education buildings and how they're all looking uniform now. And in here we have this front view of the student center building, and then the back portion of the student center as well. And finally, the forum building. Here is the science education, outdoor education project, and we're still in the design phase, so this is the site plan showing how things are shaping out. We are targeting to go into DSA early of next year, and hopefully starting construction spring, summertime. And finally, the last clip is a time-lapse video that George Reed put together when they constructed that roundabout that connects you out to Brink Avenue. Thought it was clouds, but it's actually the cell tower. So that's the end of the presentation.
All right.
Unless you have any questions.
Any questions?
I have one question about the outdoor Great Valley Museum thing, and it's still in the design phase. You're hoping in summer of 2018 to begin construction? If that holds up, when do you expect to have construction be completed so that it could be used by the Great Valley Museum?
Well, right now, it depends on the DSA review time period. DSA did change their process of how they review projects. So we are targeting to go out this year. It's just a matter of when DSA gives us the okay. So the anticipated completion date would be October, November of this year, I'm sorry, 2018.
Okay. But it might be longer.
We're hoping not, because most of the project is accessibility. But, you know, it just depends on DSA and review time.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. I'm interested in the decision-making process. How do you decide what you're going to build, when you're going to build it, how much is it going to cost? Are those things all prioritized? Were they decided when the bond was passed? How do you decide those things?
I will refer that question over to Teresa, because it does go back to the beginning of the bond project, but there was a process set where it.
Teresa, I'm waiting.
Going back to the beginning of the bond, both colleges had specific allocations that they prioritized. And as we went out to bid for things, if you recall, our bidding was in a very favorable time during the recession, which wasn't favorable on that side of the house. But a lot of the bids came in lower than we had project budgets. And so whenever there was a savings, we'd send it right back to the colleges, and then they would reprioritize. So it basically, for all of the buildings on the college sites, it was by prioritization at the colleges. For the district office, we held back on allocations that we had. We had a 10 million scheduled maintenance allocation within the bond for central services to match some of our deferred maintenance projects. And again, with those, as money dried up at the state, then we would tap that scheduled maintenance money for projects. But basically, it was a collegial process that the district underwent with the colleges. And perhaps Jill and Angie would like to speak to the buildings that were prioritized at their college campuses.
So essentially, it was done 10 years ago or more.
Yes, yes. And the way this office was funded, we had, a very meager line item for central services. And as we worked through the arbitrage calculations with our experts, what was happening was our bonds were not earning over what the rates were that the bonds were yielding. And so we did not have to return those funds back to the IRS. And so as Kitchell and other architects and engineers looked at the old office buildings, they said you would just be, actually one of the terms was, you'll be putting a new saddle on a dead horse if you try to do anything with that old building. And so that's how we were able to build this, but it was over a period of time that interest was earned and did not have to be remitted back to the IRS.
Okay, now what about ongoing projects? We've used up the money, most of it.
Most of it for the Measure E money will be completely spent by the time we finish Modesto, the final roads and the painting, the outdoor. So additional projects, I mean, I haven't heard any discussion about issuing any more GO bonds. Judy and her team work on scheduled maintenance priorities, both at the district office area and with the colleges. But that money will come from the state, and it trickles in, as we know. So any new projects will be prioritized, submitted to the state, And if approved, as money becomes available, we'll work on those. Those usually are like HVACs, roofs, refurbishing more than really new projects. But you're absolutely right. Now that we are spending down the remaining of the GO bond money, that's it. Those are the projects. And we will be reallocating later on in the agenda. You'll see we're reallocating a little bit both at Columbia and central office for projects. But once it's gone, it's gone.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Teresa, would it be fair to say that when we first came up with the idea of the bond, we had a plan, we formed a plan, but no details as to specifics of what was going to be happening. And it was kind of like gave us a little leeway to adjust and add projects that weren't necessarily covered in the bond. And that was going to be covered through the contingency fund of the outside the areas that we had indicated we wanted to do, projects that we wanted to do.
Right. For the most part, that is totally accurate, with the exception that the bond argument language that we took to the voters addressed the entire facility master plan for the district, so that when we added projects, it was approved because they were part of the overall master plan. But they would not have been included, some of them, in 2005 when we started doing the prioritization. It was just that environment that we were in when the bids were coming in low. Now that's reversed and bids are starting to come in high again. So really we did the bulk of the building during those very fortuitous times. But if we go back, I have binders and binders in my office if anyone ever would like to look at them. If we go back and look at the initial prioritization of projects, that certainly has changed over the years.
So for additional holiday reading, time between your shopping, bond materials in Teresa's office. Any further questions?
I'd like to thank Kitchell for all the work.
Absolutely.
Over the years. They've had very good teams out here, and when something wasn't working, they were quick to adjust. And I know we're winding down. We're working on the very final contract with Kitchell, but amazing job with all you had to deal with.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. On my part, that roundabout is beautiful. I just wish it would have had a MJC logo.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on now to item 5.8, grants activity update, and we've had one update already from Angie on a funding of a grant that was not included in the materials.
It's included. It was just
Right, it wasn't the additional that it was now funded. Correct. Thank you. So do we have any further, or is that it? Okay, we'll pass on that. We'll move now to item 6, action items on the consent agenda. We have items 6.2 through 6.14. And first, I'll make a request to the board. Does anyone wish to pull any item that's listed on the consent agenda?
Gina, is this a supplement to the one we just received here on the side? Is that, it wasn't part of the packet, I just got it right here, so did anybody else get that one?
It's in the back of my
It was
packet.
here?
Yeah.
It was in the back of my packet when I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's the salary listing.
You got it.
So,
Okay.
so before we take a motion to approve the consent agenda,
Oh, no,
Gabe is gracious to always honor and identify those individuals
All
that
I
have,
would
that
like
have
to,
served with the district for a number of years and now are moving on to the next phase of their life. So I'll turn it over to you, Abe.
Okay, we just want to recognize 17 years of service by Deborah Laffancini in professional child development, professor of child development. And of course, we've already mentioned Jan. I think she already left for 10 years of service as the executive secretary to the chancellor. So with that, I'll move that we accept the item 6.1 through item 614 for approval.
Okay, so we have a
Motion.
motion by trustee Abe Rojas to approve the consent agenda. and seconded by trustee Don Viss. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll now move on to item 7, action items for discussion. Item 7.1, the 2016 through 2017 audit report.
Okay, thank you. I would like to introduce partner Tina Trace of Crow Harworth. And Tina has been the partner on the audit for a number of years since we went out with an RFP and engaged Crow. And at the December meeting is the meeting annually that the auditors, independent auditors, I should say, come and deliver the report on the district finances.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come before the board. We did meet with the Finance Committee in November and had a nice lengthy discussion about the audit report. We know it is interesting reading, 80 pages or so of the report. And really the report is composed of 3 different sections. There's a financial audit of the district, there's state compliance work that's accumulated there, and also the federal compliance work. So it's kind of a compendium of all 3 of those opinions. We go through the process of discussing again with your Finance Committee the whole process from start to finish in the audit. So I'm just going to hit the highlights tonight as far as the audit report. As far as the district financials, there is an unmodified opinion for the financial statements of the district. And the one thing I did want to note was there was an adoption of one new accounting policy this year, and that related to accounting for your other post-retirement benefits. And so that liability was recorded on your financial statements. You'll see that discussed throughout the financial statements as well. We also do an audit in relation to state compliance, and those procedures are set forth for us each year from the Chancellor's office, and they do vary. They integrate new items each year, and they take a few of them out, and they give us the guidance as far as reporting on that. Again, I'm pleased to report there was no findings in relation to state compliance, and I want to note that we have to give an opinion in relation to that, either qualified or unmodified, and yours is unmodified. But if there's any finding in relation to state compliance, no matter how small, it gets reported in the report. So there are no findings. And then the uniform guidance is the single audit report, and that comes from the federal guidance guidelines. And there we again have to request information about selected grants. And so for your district this year, there was 2 grants that were considered major programs, and that was Student Financial Aid and the TRIO program. So again, we have to do extensive procedures over those 2 programs, and pleased to report that there was no findings in relation to those as well. So again, an unmodified opinion in relation to that. And then the last comment was in relation to the financial statements themselves, because the question comes, you receive information all throughout the year, and is that the same information that gets put into these financial statements? And the answer is yes. There was no adjustments that were made in the audit process. These financial statements we recognize look quite different to you than the information you receive on a monthly basis, and that's because the Chancellor's Office adopted the business type model, and so it looks more like a corporate type financial statement for you with all the different funds put together. But again, there was no adjustments, so the information that you get on a monthly basis is basically combined into this financial statement, and then we add in the information in relation to fixed assets and debt and some of the pension liabilities as well. So it's a compendium of that information. And I do have to point out the extensive amount of time that your finance department puts into that process, but also out on the campuses, because we do visit, we look at the student information, we look at the programs, as I mentioned, Student Financial Aid and TRIO, and that takes a lot of staff time to get the information together for us and the samples that we select. So we want to thank very much the team that put together that time for us. We also have one other responsibility that we have in relation to the district, and that's over the bonds that you just heard about. Because they were passed under Proposition 39, there's 2 requirements that we have to fulfill for you each year. And one is a financial audit over those funds, just the fund related to the bond, and then also a performance audit that looks at the transactions that occurred during the year. And again, on that financial audit, there was no adjustments. It was an unmodified opinion in relation to the bonds. And then on the performance audit, we test a selection of transactions, and the goal there is to see that they are in compliance. So they meet those different projects that we were talking about, and they're not used for inappropriate purposes in relation to funding, for instance, administration of the district, but really on those projects for the organization. So we had no findings in relation to that performance audit as well. I can certainly answer more questions or go into any more depth in any of the areas that you would like.
Well, I too would like to thank you and thank the district staff, Teresa, your unit, the respective financial units at Columbia College and Modesto Junior College for their work and input on the audit report. And you did make a more detailed presentation to the Finance Committee, and I think the members, myself, Don, and Abe, can speak to the detail in those reports and add that we felt the district is in good financial position, and also the foundations that you're required to audit as well are in good position as well. So I'd just like to add that. Does anybody have any further questions? Yes.
May I add one
Yes.
thing? I know you thanked our staff, but I would like, since it is my last meeting, Sarah and Mary do a tremendous amount of work, and Mary throughout the year in the internal audit side, and then of course Sarah doing all the comprehension, and they're a great team, and I just want to thank both of you, because then when we have these external auditors come,
Right.
we feel good.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You know, on these audit reports, everything points to the bottom line. And the bottom line was we had a clean report, and that's very commendable.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to item 7.2, personnel negotiations, Yosemite Community College District / California School Employees Association, chapter number 420. And this is with respect to the reopeners, correct? And we will be holding a public hearing?
That's correct.
Okay. Yes.
If we can go back to 7.1 and get a motion.
To approve, sorry about that.
Move forward. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So we'll bring back item 7.1, the 16-17 audit report, and entertain a motion to approve and accept the audit report.
Move to approve.
Motion by John Rodriguez,
Second.
second by trustee Don Viss. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we'll move back to item 7.2. And this is on the contract reopeners, correct? Okay. So at first, we will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to comment on this particular item? Seeing none, we will now close the public hearing, and I'll turn it over to Vice Chancellor of Human Resource.
If there's no other comments, you can entertain a motion.
So the recommended action is that the Board of Trustees conduct a public hearing and
We did that.
accept the reopeners as stated in the agenda.
Correct.
Okay. So would anyone like to make a motion with respect to that?
So moved.
So moved by trustee Rojas, second by trustee Martin. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Move on now to item 7.3, board policy, first reading. We'll turn it over to Connie. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Garrett, Vice Chair Beggs. Congratulations this evening, and members of the board, Chancellor and Cabinet. Thank you, Trustee DeMartini, for letting folks know that we are starting our Chapter 4 Academic Affairs Review. And so we have these before you this evening. We have 7 board policies. Our committee did meet, the Board Policy Committee did meet on Monday, and they do have some recommended revisions, and those have been put at your stations, and you'll see the recommended revisions in red. So that helps us follow along. So I will go ahead and get started with 4025, which is the first one on the list, Philosophy and Criteria for Associate Degree and General Education. You'll see on line 11, replace the word symbolize with demonstrate. Line 28, replace the word ways with means. And then in line 30, strike examining values inherent in proposed solutions to major society problems and replace that with in critical thinking and analysis. So now that line reads, it is also desirable that general education programs involve students actively in critical thinking and analysis. So those were the recommended revisions.